Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior professional from Faridabad, India, Dr. Amit Nagpal. Amit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Garg.
Dr. Nagpal is the president and story coach, and he's as the founder of Bloggers Alliance. He's a marketer turned professor turned storyteller. So, Amit, before we talk about marketing, tell me about your own journey in brief, and how did your journey from marketer to professor to storyteller shape your perspective on brand storytelling?
Right. So my professional journey, I would say, began in 1995
Mhm.
when I started my MBA in marketing. 97, of course, I finished my MBA and got into my first job, 97 to 2011. For a few years, I worked in corporate. Again, one common thread, which has been there throughout my career is media marketing.
Mhm.
So I was into television channel for a few years. Then I shifted to teaching. So I was teaching advertising, brand management, product management, and subjects allied with media and marketing.
Mhm.
That continued till 2011. And 2011, I decided to become a personal branding coach.
Mhm.
And in 2 years, it was a realization, because I learned personal branding from Americans, and I realized that American approach to personal branding doesn't work in India. So it has to be customized according to our culture.
Mhm.
A lot of people I met did not feel comfortable with the term personal branding. In a way, it was, a lot of concept selling in those days, 2011. I think there were only 3 people in India who were talking about personal branding. And then I realized that storytelling is the most powerful way of brand building in our culture because it
Right.
creates a win-win with the audience.
Mhm.
Audience may get some inspiration. Audience also benefits in the process, and the storyteller builds his brand. So that was my big learning during 2011 to 13 and
Mhm.
2013. I have been a personal branding and storytelling coach. Currently, I am focusing more on the niche, for independent directors, personal branding for aspiring independent directors and independent directors. Though, of course, I coach some other professionals and
Very
CEOs.
interesting. So let's talk about your journey as a marketer. In what ways do you believe storytelling can transform brand management and marketing?
In fact, my LinkedIn newsletter title itself is Your Story is Your Brand. Because storytelling is the most powerful tool in marketing as well as branding. There is that famous book by Seth Godin, All Marketers Are Storytellers.
Mhm.
Uh, why storytelling is a powerful tool for brand building? So let me share a couple of points.
Mhm.
There is a gene which is called storytelling gene, FOXP3, which is found only in human beings.
Mhm.
Human beings are the only species who can tell stories, who can narrate stories, interpret stories. So that is one. Secondly, stories get into our subconscious mind and become memorable because human brain is wired for narrative. Anything, if I go back 40 years, I'm 50-year-old now, and if I go back 40 years ago, only thing I remember is stories, stories in the sense my mother said this to me, then I reacted in this way, then this happened. So I remember everything in the form of a narrative.
Mhm.
So that's why stories are so powerful, because ultimately branding and marketing, the objective is to get top of the mind awareness, to become memorable, and stories are the most powerful brand building tools. In fact, all the advertisements which we see on television are stories.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Well said. And when I was reading about you, you make a comment: digital is magical.
Right.
Can you elaborate on how digital platforms have changed the art of storytelling?
Yes. I started saying digital is magical because in fact, I had run a campaign also.
Hmm.
Uh, 50 surprises, which digital word gave me. Uh, so like I'll tell you one of the biggest surprises which I got in the digital world was one day, in those years, 10, 11 years ago, I was not using any advanced software. So I would go to Google and type my name and see what results are coming there,
Hmm.
about.
Hmm.
One day I find Forbes.com has one of my articles, and it was a big, big surprise in those days.
Hmm.
So I had actually written an article, how I found my deepest passion, which was published on marynews.com, where I used to write a column on, personal branding. So Forbes.com had picked up that article, given 1 week summary of that article, and then linked it to Mary News.
Hmm.
Now that was one of the big surprises, and these kind of surprises then became more and more frequent, and that's why I started saying digital is magical. Another very interesting incident which I had was 2011 to 12. I was just sitting in my office, building social media connections, having conversations. I did not try to even look for clients because I wanted to build my brand and get clients more through pull rather than push. So what happened within 1 year, I was ranked among 100 most influential Indians online. And for a few weeks, I was more influential than the Prime Minister office because Dr. Manmohan Singh started his Twitter handle a few weeks or months later.
Hmm.
So that's why digital is magical. And digital, let me give you two examples. One is digital has democratized storytelling.
Mhm.
Like I say, previously we used to have Bhag Milkha Bhag, or, famous people's biographies, autobiographies, films, stories, which we used to hear, watch on different media. But now every person has the power to tell his or her story through Facebook, blog, website, social media, so every person has got that power, which is, I will call it, democratization of storytelling. Second thing, which digital has given us the power is, in fact, that power is not there with the mass media. It is only there with the digital media, that our content can go viral. And I read a quote, somewhere, that everyone is going to be famous once in a lifetime in the, in the coming years, because everyone is going to be viral at some point of time.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the influence and power of
Hmm.
digital.
Hmm.
And stories actually build a stronger emotional connect with audience, and there is a higher probability of stories going well.
Hmm. Great response. Thank you. My next question, Amit, is what are some of the most common challenges faced in storytelling and how can they be overcome?
Right. The first and the biggest challenge is that a story should not should not be seen as self-promotion. So it should not be too much in the I mode. That is the biggest challenge. So, even if you are talking about your appreciation, achievements, if they can be in the, for example, if they can be in the third person format, let's say, I give a recommendation which I have received from a very, very senior person
Hmm.
as part of my story, this is what Mr. Vikesh Walia has to say. Then of course it is more credible than I doing my self appreciation. So which is important. Second challenge is, to integrate emotions with logic.
Hmm.
If I'm doing storytelling only for entertainment, then of course I have no, objective, or it is not brand storytelling in that sense. So I may tell a purely emotional story, a emotional healing story, a inspirational story, which has, I do not have an end objective in mind. But when I'm telling a brand story, there is an objective. The objective is to, whether it is to raise my own brand or a client's brand,
Hmm.
there is an objective in brand storytelling. And that objective has to be achieved in a win-win way. Even if I am able to bring a smile on the, faces of my audiences, then I have succeeded as a storyteller. So I have created a win-win, for the audiences. So these are the two primary challenges. In corporate world, there is an additional challenge of shortage of time. So you cannot, use a very lengthy narrative. So you have to keep in mind the, the time duration available.
Hmm. Well said. Well said. And my next question is how does storytelling enhance personal branding? And you're an expert in personal branding.
Right.
Does it enhance personal branding, especially for professionals and leaders?
Right. So one is like, you can integrate your achievements, embed your achievements in the story.
Mm.
Let's say I have a client. In fact, I worked with a client who had done his post graduation from AIMS. Then he had worked for 15 years in AIMS. Then he shifted to Medanta. Now, the client cannot go to LinkedIn and say that, okay, I did my PhD, PG from AIMS, or I worked for 15 years in AIMS. You cannot post it directly.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to weave it as part of the story. You
Mm.
have to tell, and the story has to be human, because you don't only talk about your achievements, you also talk about your failures, you also talk about your learnings, you are also vulnerable, you also talk about your mistakes. Then it sounds like a human story.
Mm.
So I think that's very important. If you really want to build a authentic personal brand, if you really want their audiences should feel connected with you, share your story, then it has to be authentic. And to be authentic, it has to be a mix of achievements and your humanity, which is vulnerability, mistakes, failures.
Mm. Mm. Well said. Can you also explain the concept of data storytelling and its significance in today's data-driven world?
Yeah. So data storytelling is, in fact, I would say one of the most complex, forms of storytelling, because you are integrating two things.
Mm.
One is the data visualization. So whether you are using a tool like Tableau, or you are using, some other tools to visualize your data, even simple tools like infographics, and then you are weaving the narrative in a public speaking presentation, in a recording video, so
Mm.
you are weaving this narrative or story along with the data visualization. Then it becomes data storytelling.
Mm.
Of course, the highest possible level of data storytelling is where your visual is so complete, so perfect, that it tells the complete story. Like I was watching these graphs about the India-Australia final cricket match. And these graphs which were there, which I found through Google, was so complete. They were telling, okay, India was at this situation at 15 overs, Australia is at this situation, this runs, this wicket fell at this many overs, this person took the wicket. So if that whole data is there, whole story is there in the data, then that is very, very powerful, which is usually not possible or easy to do.
Mm.
So we weave the narrative along with the data visualization to make it a,
Very interesting. Very interesting. My next question is how important is creativity in brand storytelling, and how can this be fostered?
Yeah, so there are so many aspects of creativity. I will explain, with few examples.
Mm.
One of my most popular blogs was spirituality, social media, and personal brand.
Mm.
Now, the blog starts with, when my mother saw me writing this blog, she told me, Amit, you have gone bonkers, you have done too much meditation, and you are linking two things which are totally unrelated with each other.
Mhm.
So then I told my mother, okay, let me finish this blog. If you are not able, if you're not convinced about the connection between spirituality and personal branding, then I will not submit this blog to Peter for the International Blogathon.
Mm.
Now, then, the whole blog is very theoretical, because I talk about, okay, spirituality is about discovering your deep passion, and personal branding also requires deep passion to create content
Mm.
consistently. So that those are the connections between spirituality and personal branding. So I explained those 7 connections.
Mm.
Then I ended the blog. Little bit of dramatization is always good in storytelling. So I said, oh, I forgot to tell you, my mother did get convinced about the connection between spirituality and personal branding. And that's why the blog is been, published on Peter's website. Now, this is one example. So same way we can, I can give you scores of examples of how to give a story touch to your content
Mhm.
sometimes. How to be more creative. Like you can be so, there is so much opportunity of creativity in the headline of the blog.
Mm.
So if you look at the headlines which I have given to the blogs, you will find, they are very, very appealing, memorable. One of my headlines was Robots Network, Humans Bond.
Mm.
Because humans, there is always 1%, some element of emotion in the relationship.
Right, right.
Okay, now that appreciation, that headline was appreciated by LinkedIn on their Twitter handle.
Mm.
And these are examples of creativity in your, content creation, in your headline, in your integrating story with the theory, so we can apply creativity. Coming up with the, very idea of, blogs, like one of my interviews with Times of India, I shared a very interesting concept of how I get my blog ideas. Basically, I create some kind of a matrix. Okay, spirituality is on one side of the matrix, personal branding is on the other side. So spirituality and personal branding, I'll connect. Now, let's say the second topic is social media. The social media and personal branding, I'll connect. So I basically write a lot on cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary topics, which, the whole idea becomes very creative and new.
Very
So,
interesting. Very
yeah.
interesting. Thank you. My next question is, how can storytelling be used effectively in crisis management?
Crisis management is actually a very, very important, place to tell powerful stories, because your organization is suffering some kind of a damage of reputation, and you have to tell a story. You have to maybe, you have to, rewrite the narrative. You have to reshape the narrative through your stories. One example, which if you remember, when the worms were found in Cadbury chocolates, and Amitabh Bachchan was hired
Mm,
by Cadbury's to create that campaign, and Amitabh talked about how Cadbury's has changed its packaging, what action has been taken after the crisis. Now that is very important.
mm,
As they say, you can't fool all the people all the time. So
yeah.
you have to take some actions to mitigate the crisis, and then share, give an assurance to your customer this would not happen again. And that's where storytelling is powerful, because storytelling will maybe change the narrative, because the customer is thinking, okay, should I trust this brand or not? So the storytelling changes the narrative. Yes, I can trust this
Very
brand.
well said. Thank you. My next question, Amit, is on the role of influencers. In the last few years, hundreds, thousands of influencers have come into the social media platforms.
Right.
How do you view the role of influencers in storytelling and brand building?
Right. So, see, I will share very honestly, as the founder of Bloggers Alliance, I'll share the both the positive and negative. Negative, what I mean is some kind of precautions which need to be taken. So, the positive role of influencers is, they have a certain credibility in their own community. Now, companies are going more and more for micro influencers,
Yeah.
because micro influencers have a stronger credibility in a
Mm,
smaller community,
right.
while bigger influencers may have a, larger community, but their influence may not be so
Mm,
strong.
mm,
So these influencers can, build the, or they can leverage their personal credibility to build the brand of
right.
the company or their products.
Mm,
Now, that is the positive power of influencers. What I mean by negative is, like, recently ASCI, which is Advertising Standards Council of India, they had created some guidelines regarding, for example, health influencers. So if you are talking about health, diseases, what you should do about, a certain ailment,
mm,
then they need some kind of a medical qualification, so that they do not, just, bring advice from thin air.
mm,
So health influencers need to be more cautious. It should not be, what we say,
mm,
anyone can share anything kind of an atmosphere.
mm, mm. Well said. So, time for a few more questions. My next question is, you're also an author of a book titled Personal Branding, Storytelling, and Beyond. What is the core message of your book that you want to share with my viewers and listeners?
Right. So the core message is, of course, your story is your brand. But if I have to divide that message into the three units which are there in the book, the
Mm,
first unit focuses on personal branding. So how do you do personal branding on Quora, on LinkedIn, Twitter bios, each tool has been discussed in each chapter.
mm,
Uh, then the second part unit of the book, the second part of the book talks about storytelling, how stories integrate emotions and logic, how stories are cross-generational.
mm.
We are talking a lot about generation gap, but
Right.
stories are something which can, bring the children and the parents and the grandparents on the same platform. So second unit talks about storytelling. It's how to apply storytelling, and goes into the depth of storytelling.
Hmm.
The third unit is very interesting because it is beyond. So it has chapters like how to become an interesting person.
Hmm.
And if you are an interesting person, then you will have an interesting bio,
Right.
and that will make you memorable.
Hmm.
So there is spirituality and personal branding in the third unit. So those kind of things. Let me give you a very interesting example.
Mhm.
2010, I connected with a gentleman, Patrick Fass on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
He was organization development professor in New Zealand at that point of time. And I still remember after 14 years that I saw a word on his profile in the hobbies section, used to be there on LinkedIn in those days.
Hmm.
So I saw a word on his profile, shamanism.
Mhm.
I had a curiosity. I've never heard of shamanism. I went to Google, I researched about shamanism, and I still remember his profile for that one word. Now, same way, if you say that my hobby is scuba diving, then I have that curiosity. Okay, what is scuba diving? How do you
Hmm.
do that? I watch your video, and that makes your brand memorable.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. So I have time for two more questions. My next question is on Bloggers Alliance. I want to ask you one question,
Right.
which is that tell me about Bloggers Alliance and what are your objectives for this community that you have created?
Right. So as the digital creator economy is evolving, so our objectives are also evolving
Mm.
according the scenarios. The more when we started in 2019, there was more focus, of course, on text blogging in those days. Our focus was also on text blogging, and creators' focus was also on text blogging, and video and podcast had just started becoming popular in a way.
Mm. Mm.
Today, if you look at it, in the past 5 years, podcasting has become very popular. It's in fact, so many people come to me. One student, a few days back, she messaged me that, sir, podcasting is now so fashionable and this
Mm.
thing in our generation. So, you must start a podcast. And so we have started, in fact, 3 years back, we started a national podcasting competition, Battle of Voices, which we have been doing for past three. We
Mm.
have done 3 editions. uh, we have organized training sessions and webinars on video blogging and very specialized sessions also. I have found, for example, a lot of creatives are introverts, and introverts have certain personality traits and certain challenges which they face.
Mm.
In fact, it was shocking for me to see when I go on Twitter and I type hashtag introvert, it shows introvert problems.
Mm.
Why not introvert blessings? So when I go to Google and type introvert blessings, I find hundreds of articles talking about the positive side of introversion. So we have, in fact, Gauri Das is one of the LinkedIn influencers, and she had conducted one session for introverts.
Mm.
Introversion is actually a very important trait for creativity, because for creativity you have to go within.
Mm.
You have to draw inspiration from yourself, or you have to connect with yourself. Sometimes you find inspiration in nature, sometimes you draw inspiration from your own self, but the highest level of inspiration is, of course, the divine inspiration, which again you will find by going within through meditation. I get my best ideas when I meditate, and some of most
Mm.
creative things happen during meditation.
Very interesting. And my last question to you, Amit, and this is for the many people who will listen to our conversation.
Right.
What would you say are three lessons on the subject of personal branding
Hmm.
that you want our viewers and listeners to take away?
Okay. So I will tell it more in the form of quotable quotes, so
Yeah,
they will become
exactly.
memorable also.
Mm.
In fact, I believe quotable quotes are like astronauts' capsules.
Mhm.
When you go to, as an astronaut, you eat one capsule, lunch is over, you eat one capsule, dinner is over.
Mm.
Same way, if you read one powerful quotable quote of a master, of a famous person, your learning for the day is over, because there
Mm.
is some such power in quotable quotes.
Right.
So my first quote would be that personal branding is not about creating a larger than life image.
Mm.
It is about being as beautiful and large-hearted as life is.
Mm.
So that is the quote one, or maybe lesson one.
Mm.
Lesson two, I would say, people believe it when others are appreciating you.
Mm.
Even God comes to your rescue when others are praying for you. So our destinies are so intertwined. This is one learning which actually happened only with personal branding.
Yeah.
How our destinies are intertwined with each other. And
Right.
third, interesting lesson, which maybe I think I'll explain that lesson through a story. So the disciple goes to the master and says, "Okay, master, what have you observed about me? And tell me one biggest observation which you have." So the master tells the disciple, "Okay, you have the power, to create magic in other people's life. You can become somebody's inspiration. You can become an inspiration for a poet or author. You have such positive vibrations. So, you can create magic with that, with that vibration, with that, influence. You can create magic in other people's life." Now the disciple says, "Master, why can't I create magic in my own life?" The master says, "That is the paradox. You can create magic in other people's life, not in your own life." Now, what I mean by that is, if I appreciate someone, then I enhance the credibility of that person. But if I appreciate myself, people may or may not trust.
Yeah. Very interesting. And on that note, and your three wonderful lessons, personal branding is not about creating an image which is larger than life for yourself. Second is people believe when others are talking about you. And there's a very famous quote which also says that, personal branding is all about what people say when you're not in the boardroom.
Right.
And the third one you said was learn to appreciate others. Thank
Yeah.
you, Amit, for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for talking to me about so many different aspects of personal branding and storytelling. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Welcome, Mr. Garg. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.